Completing the Robinson cycling family is Desmond, Brian's elder brother, who remembers his father's influence.
Yes, it goes back to my father joining the Huddersfield Road Club when the Huddersfield Road Club was founded, round about 1921, I think. And he was invited to ride in the Anfield 100, which he was very proud of, and he broke evens, which was something in their day, breaking 20 mile an hour. And somewhere there's a certificate, but it's gone into the annals of the Huddersfield Road Club somewhere, that has. So he became club champion. So that really was in my mind as a child. I always wanted to be a racing cyclist, never smoked, etc. And I was good in the gymnasium and so on at school, because that's what I wanted to do. So I joined the Huddersfield Road Club in 1946. And I didn't start racing. My father didn't want either of us to race till we were men. He said cycle racing was a man's job. But anyhow, I was racing at just under 18, and Brian was racing round about the same time 3 years later. There's 2 years and 2 years and 9 months, or 2 years and 10 months in Brian and I. So I started quite a bit before him. This is the Huddersfield Road Club, gathered on a club run in February 1948 on the moors up above Huddersfield. So we go back right into the 1940s. Next thing that happened was a bit of history that you probably don't know. Peter Bates was selected for the Paris London, and that's what brought Mass Start, as we called it, into the Huddersfield Road Club. We were a sole time trialling club up to that day. But Peter knew about road racing then. Albert Derbyshire was the key time trial man, and he said Albert Derbyshire went on the front in France for hours on his own, and the French couldn't believe it, because they don't race like that. And Peter got us started on track racing at Roundy Park, grass track racing, and then when the NCU used to run closed circuit races, we started on the NCU's closed circuit races.
Those circuit races were held mainly in public parks, airfields, or on a motor racing circuit such as this in Brooklands, just outside London. It was called Mass Start. This for all the riders was a far cry from the other form of cycle racing, time trialling. All start together. First one over the line is the winner. And it's a great spectacle for the public. But British cycling was still years behind the continental scene. But it was this man, Percy Stallard, that's him in the white top with the two bands across his chest. He was to change the whole face of British cycling. He organised a race on the open road from Llangollen to Wolverhampton in 1942. This led to the formation of the BLRC, the British League of Racing Cyclists, and it was a rival to the governing body of cycling in those days, the NCU, the National Cyclist Union.
This is Huntley Hall, a famous ford in North Yorkshire, and this is the kind of thing we used to do on Easter holidays or any other time when we could get away on the bikes. We'd be youth hosteling and sometimes CTC, bed and breakfasting. We lived on our bicycles.
Training amounted to as many miles as possible. Weight training in the garage, some roller riding, and mammoth bashes to Romney Marsh in Kent and back in 4 days. He made steady progress, 5th in the National Cyclist Union Road Championship and 3rd in the Hill Climb Championship in 1950. And then he was equal 7th in the Isle of Man International in 1951. He even tried grass track racing. Here he is at a meeting in Leeds. And then with brother Des, both were chosen for the road team for the Olympics in 1952.
This is the 1952 Olympic team. There's George Fleming up there, and I'm just running out of names. Graham Vines again there. There's Les Wilson of Leeds there, I remember him. There's Brian there, myself there. Well, that's Lloyd Binch, that. This is the start of the Olympic road race, and I'm visible on here just by my quartered hat there.
The road team were unfortunate in losing their captain, Dick Bowes, in a training spin accident. And the British representatives are Graham Vines, Brian and Desmond Robinson, and Les Ingman. The British team rides strongly and well, but the pace is too hot. The British boys just can't match the speed of the opposition. Ingman, despite a gallant effort, is forced to retire, and the Robinson brothers finish 12 minutes after the winner to take the 26th and 27th places, whilst Vines, further behind, comes in number 31. André Noyel of Belgium taking the honours by a comfortable margin.
Well, Brian and I were the only two that finished, and we finished 26th and 27th. But Brian had been in early attack, and then later on I said, come on, sit on my wheel, and we tried to bridge across to a leading group, but I ended up, because he was a bit poorly, it was bit and lump, you know that term?
No.
Don't you?
No.
Well, there's bit and bit, isn't there? Bit and bit. Don't you know that term? Bit and bit. Well, bit and lump is when one's doing the lump. Most of the work. And that was me, because he was a bit poorly. But we finished together, 26th and 27th. This is Brian and I returning from the Olympic Games, and I think we're being photographed by the newspapers on Wakefield Station, where we arrived back from London.
Ellis Briggs were a local manufacturer of classic bikes, if you like, in those days. And they had sponsored Ken Russell. Well, it sponsored me as an amateur by giving me a bike. That's the only bike I ever had until I turned professional, really. So yes, they'd been looking after us as amateurs. And then I think I turned independent to ride the Tour of Britain, which must have been 53. Well, instead of being an amateur and riding for an envelope with a prize voucher in, you could ride for cash, and you could get paid expenses. So that was the road to go down if you wanted to be a professional.
And here is the basis of the breakaway group that eventually builds up into the leader bunch of 24 riders at the stage finish. Bob Maitland, Brian Robinson, Don Wilson, Bedwell and Pottier. Later in the day they are joined by others, but only one Continental will be amongst them. Today the advantage must be pressed home with every ounce of energy. There can be no easing by the riders at the front, and the pace is kept cracking at just under 30 miles an hour, countering the determined pursuit that is only a short way behind. And at Scarborough, Clive Parker of the Hercules team scores the first British stage win, covering the 104 miles in 4 hours, 2 minutes, 5 seconds. And John Pottier of the Warewell team takes the yellow jersey from the Continentals. With number 31, John Pottier, wearing the yellow jersey, the Tour speeds on to Newcastle for another British win by Dave Bedwell, who is now second to Pottier in the general classification. As the Tour approaches Scotland, there's an early breakaway from the riders seeking the honour of being first up the steep climb to Carter Bar and on over the border into Scotland. It's a lonely road over the Cheviot Hills, with the nearest town many miles from Carter Bar. But the welcoming crowds are there, Scots and English, ready to encourage the riders on this stiff climb. There's a 30-second bonus for the first man over the line at the top, as well as a useful cash prize. But they're hard-earned rewards. Down to bottom gear as the gradient stiffens, and thrusting at the pedals, the leaders force on. Guldemont, Ilsley and Bale are at the front. Guldemont suddenly makes his effort and jumps away. Ilsley is with him, but the Frenchman can hold them no longer and has quickly tailed off. And at the top, Arthur Ilsley leads the way from the Belgian Guldemont, who is heading a determined continental counterattack. Here is a chasing group, too late for the Prime Award, but intent on catching the breakaways ahead. follow the main body of the field, equally determined in the pursuit.
There's a warm Scottish welcome for the race as it crosses the border. For we Scots are always ready to appreciate a tough contest and to applaud a worthy winner. We're seeing some fine riding today, from the men from across the sea, from the English riders, aye, and from the Scots too. In Glasgow, the crowds turn out to cheer Guildemont and Bale, the first to arrive after leading for over 140 miles. Now Dave Bedwell finishes with Wysinski, Thomas and Parker. And although the first 3 places in the stage are won by Continentals, without a Scotsman among the leaders, we're full of praise for Dave Bedwell, who is now leading the race by 4 seconds. It's a fast day, and we Scots have a special cheer for our countryman Ian Greenfield, who is leading the tour back to England. We hope for big things from this tall, elegant rider. First man over the border into England, he's back with the regrouped field as they pass on to the steep climb to the top of Shap Fell, a magic name in the history of British long-distance cycling. It's a tough road over the moors of the border country, and the field takes the long climb without splitting.
Well, I didn't win it, I was second. I carried the jersey for 4 days, and then the big teams got cracking. So can't have another guy from Ellis Briggs winning through the biggest race in England for 2 years running, so they carved me up. At least that's my story. And I lost it, so I was second. Lost it to a good training companion actually, Gordon Thomas, who helped me on the way to my career really. So it wasn't a bad result really.
So this is the bike you'll be riding tomorrow, right?
Yes, yeah, it's my fine weather bike if you like. The lightest one I've got really, which I shall need tomorrow.
And tomorrow's ride is?
It's a CTC Phil and Friends ride, starting off above Sheffield, going through a favourite cafe of ours which is at Langsett, and then up the Holmoss, back into Derbyshire, ending up for lunch at Ian, and then back to Sheffield. So it's about 106 kilometres, but it's a tough ride. In fact, the hill up to Langsett from Sheffield is quite a killer really. Udenbeck it's called, and if I get up there all right, and up Holmoss, well I shall go all the way, but at the top of Holmoss I'll refresh my memory and think how I'm going to get back. So it'd be either turn around at top of Holmoss and come back home, or go on to lunch in Sheffield. Depends how I feel really. I mean, I don't suppose it's strange really, but some days are good and some days are not so good, you know, so if I'm on a good day I shall go all the way.
Many people take part in the ride?
Yeah, there's about 600. It's to support riders that have been badly used by the law, not well represented by the law, through the CTC.
Good. Yeah, that must have been nice. How do I operate that?
Bonne chance, Phil.
Merci.